of course they had the grace of God working through them, but they they were just really virtuous people. They had patience, they had temperance, they knew how to make decisions because they had disciplined their virtues to align with truth, goodness, and beauty. And so, that's probably one of the concepts that I would think about how to pass down to my younger self. Welcome back to the Out of the Box podcast, where Steele and I, Jose, your host, get to talk about outside of the box ideas. Today, we're going to be talking about something specifically in regards to how our younger self helps us understand our current self, and how can we use that knowledge to propel ourselves to the future self. And so, before we get started, I just want to invite y'all to subscribe to our channel. This is a channel dedicated to searching for truth, searching for meaning in our world, and really spanning outside of different subjects so that we can understand what our world means and how we can connect different fields of study to reach a further truth. So, without further ado, Seal, so I know I was mentioning to you before we started the podcast that recently I had the experience of watching some toddler videos of when I was younger. And, I had some really interesting realizations based off of my younger self, which were, just this already energetic nature, but also a little bit of a mixture of sometimes like shyness. So I tend to see some of that personality aspect still present in my day-to-day life. Um so it was just very interesting to notice that those little behavior patterns of when I was younger to now, just how I evolved. Of course, there's some things that somebody learns throughout life, like discipline and stuff like that. So there's certainly different behaviors that can be altered. However, the nature of the self tends to gravitate towards certain things, right? Towards performance. I can notice there was different plays and that I was performing in, which showed you know how I'm drawn to that today as well, like performing in music, performing with balloon art and entertainment. And so it's just so interesting how I was noticing those patterns and behaviors, those attractions towards certain endeavors are still present in my life. And I began to think about how sometimes there's people out there that don't know what they want to do in their life. They don't know what their attractions are or what their um, passion is. And I was thinking about this idea of how if we can look back at our past self, how can we understand our current self to propel us to the future self that we eventually want to become? So, what are your thoughts on that? Have you ever had that experience of looking at yourself when you were younger, or maybe a video, pictures that, or stories that your parents told you, stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. I remember several years ago, looking at some old videos when I was maybe 2 or 3. I can't remember. Like, I don't know how old I really was, but probably around that age range. And it was because my parents got like an old video camera, like home camera type thing, real retro, and like VHS tape type stuff. And it was really interesting, seeing myself running around like in the old house, in the old neighborhood, and just with all retro toys and furniture and everything. It's like traveling back in the time machine back in time, and it's really strange, and it's interesting whenever we look at ourselves in a picture from like years ago. For any of us, our brain actually has to recognize that that's us in the picture, even though it doesn't look like us now, and has to almost make up some story to connect that picture to us now. It has to fill in all those gaps over the years because our memory is not perfect. So So there's gaps, but we have to like tie it in somehow to our lives. So, it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I think we can learn from our watching ourselves and our patterns, like when we're children. Like, are we more curious? Are we more shy? Like you said, or are we trying to do things that other children aren't trying to do? Because I kind of saw that in myself, I think. I was always trying to explore things and trying to do unique things. And from what I've been told, I was always trying to find out as much information about everything as I could. And I picked up on information really quickly after like 2 or 3 times of like going over something, I would know it kind of thing. So I think we can use those to tell us about what our strengths and weaknesses are. And that
Mhm.
tells us a lot about our personality and what we can do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really interesting to see how those inclinations are present in our past self, and they still continue to be big components of our life today. I mean, from that video that I watched to now, it's been 21, 22 years since that happened. And of course, like you were saying, there's those memory gaps that I just don't remember doing certain things when I was younger. Sometimes I forget what I ate yesterday. So I mean,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I
that
don't
can
know about you, but when I was watching that video myself, I didn't remember any of that. The only reason I remember is because the video. If it wasn't for
yeah,
that video, I
because it
wouldn't.
was there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, but it's so cool because you know, you would think, or at least, in my mind, I thought I was very different when I was younger. Where I at least I didn't have a concept of, what I was like when I was younger. I see pictures and stuff, but once you see a video, actual video captured, uh, I realized like, oh wow, I was actually very social, and I was actually very, open to like kind of extroverted.
Similar.
And because I thought I was really shy when I was younger. I thought I was like didn't talk to anyone, but the videos they showed
A different
they proved me wrong. Yeah. I would see that I was talking to everyone, very extroverted, just kind of jumping all the time. Like I had a lot of energy, and I was really good at performing. I was just, I would see people do something and I could imitate it back. Stuff like that I started noticing. I was just like very hands-on learner, just kind of very good at picking up things pretty fast.
hands-on learning.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, because there was a video for like Christmas Eve where my dad was showing us a dance, right? He was showing us a dance, and then all my cousins and I had to go up individually to perform the dance, right? And so I saw some of my cousins, they were kind of shy, so they would just do like little movements there. But like for me, when I came up, I was pretty good at it. Of course, maybe it's hereditary and my dad passed it on to me, and maybe my brother as well. But I just think it's so interesting that you know that I was able to pick it up so fast, and without any shyness or anything. I was just up there, like performing for my family, and
Yeah.
and I know that I've done that throughout life, performing, singing, stuff like that.
Is
Probably
there
the singing part more recently, in the past like 7 years, but like being open to perform in the public.
right. Yeah, and everything when we experience as a child is definitely makes a difference on how we turn out as an adult. Um, like how we talked about how like 95% of our programming is done by the time we're in our teen years or somewhere around that age or something like that. Like most of our programming of who we are and the way we behave is from our childhood. And of course, our attachment style is from our childhood. Our personality develops a large part from our childhood and maybe changes when we're becoming a teenager and stuff. But yeah, a lot of what we are comes from our experiences in our childhood. The way we act and the rewards and punishments we're given shape all of those things. Like imagine if a child goes through abuse as a child, like when they're growing up,
Mm,
that really does change the way they see the world and the way they see other people and how much they trust people and how much they see in terms of what they have to do to earn love or respect. Like it changes their view compared to someone who grows up in a loving home. It really does. It makes a huge difference. So
yeah. Yeah. And I was just thinking about this right now, like for you still, if you could go back to your younger self, right? The one in the videos, if you could tell him one thing about like now, like you're where you are right now, what would you tell him if you did have the chance to speak to your younger self?
that's a good question. Um, like saying where I'm at now, like like well, all the hard work I guess will pay off, and it's worth it because it leads to something greater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? Like one of the things, if I had the opportunity to talk to my younger self, I mean, I'm sure I wouldn't be able to have a very uh like logical conversation because
Yeah.
it's not been too long since it's only been like 21 years. But if I did have a chance, I would just say like, don't ever lose your creativity. Keep creating. Keep
Oh yeah.
working hard.
Yeah.
Because I just wouldn't want to change like what happened.
I don't think I would want to either. That's why it's hard to think of something other than maybe all the hard times that you're going to go through are going to pay off and build up to something greater and then
Yeah.
the knowledge and tools to help others.
And you know what? Actually, I was watching a video yesterday about suffering, and I know you had mentioned the idea that some people have traumatic moments or suffering throughout their youth, because that's when a lot of the programming happens. If we could tell people like in their younger self, you know, how much, you know, how much they need to like identify themselves not with what the world is telling them, but like they have the possibility to create their own storyline. Also, the idea that suffering can actually bring about a lot of fruit in life because you cannot love without suffering, right? You cannot uh love requires sometimes sacrifice, right? And so and why do we need love, right? Well, we need love because humans are made to love. Humans are made to be loved, right? And by love, I mean the idea of wishing the best for the other person, right? So we want others to wish the best for us, and we should strive to wish the best for others, right? And now with the society that's gravitating towards the self and has become, I guess, transition a little bit more to the egoism of like, hey, you just supposed to serve me, right? Yes, we are supposed to serve others, but we should also return that back to others, right? The service aspect. Um, and so that is love in itself, right? When a parent gives the best of themselves to their child so that their child can bear, you know, good good standards and good fruits from life. They need to love and sacrifice a lot. And so so yeah, I don't know if the younger self would understand that particularly, but like you said, all the suffering, can bring about a lot of fruit, and which is awesome, and that's something that I come to realize recently because there's all those songs and stuff like that, what is love, baby,
Oh
don't
yeah.
hurt me no more, what is love, right? And so
Mhm.
I think about children, and how they develop, and sometimes it's the character deformations or the character formations are because of love or lack of love. So,
That's true. Yeah, actually, yeah, that's true. The withdrawal of love through like outward abuse or even neglect
mhm,
towards from ignoring someone or withdrawing love from someone can actually have very powerful lifelong effects. And not always lifelong, like sometimes the person can improve, but sometimes they can't. So, or sometimes they don't because they don't get the help they need to improve or they don't figure out how to. But so, yeah, it really shows how powerful, like you're saying, how powerful love can be if taking it away can have such drastic effects. Just like
yeah,
providing love can also have drastic effects too, on either side of positive or negative. It's
yeah,
true.
yeah. And there's also the concept of becoming a virtuous person, right?
Mm.
Because I think at this point of my life, I realized that the main goal, is not to be super rich, super wealthy. That's that's maybe for some people that might be it, but that's very uh it doesn't last that much. You get $1 million, you want 10 million now. You get 10 million, you want 100 million. So there's that goal never ends. And so, but what can and life never end. Like, well, life does end at some point here on Earth, but like, I think what makes people superheroes is people's ability to become a virtuous person, right? Like the virtues, like, whether you decide to be a married person, a single person, whatever it might be, um, you know, everyone can strive for virtuousness. Which is the idea perhaps of what Christianity sees as being a saint, right? All that they were, of course they had the grace of God working through them, but they they were just really virtuous people. They had patience, they had temperance, they knew how to make decisions because they had disciplined their virtues to align with truth, goodness, and beauty. And so, that's probably one of the concepts that I would think about how to pass down to my younger self. um and I think, thinking about this is really leading me to the idea of, like, if I had a child, how would I parent them, right? Because
Yeah,
technically they would be my younger self,
yeah, at some point.
right? Technically, because they are a smaller version of you, right? So in a way, your younger self would be your child,
Yeah. So
right?
how would you?
Because they're a mini version of you.
Yeah. How would you?
so
Like,
So I think that idea or that question leads to parenting as well. Like, how would you parent your child, right? If you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you tell them? And so I think that would be the same thing for one's kid.
yeah, that's true.
So yeah, so I just think, like, teaching kids like virtues. I think that's the best way to prepare them for life. Because if they can make decisions on their own, if they can have patience, temperance, humility, but also courageousness, you know um
And they're pretty
along with
good.
other virtues, they can be very powerful tools in the world, powerful in the sense of like powerful in the sense of like utility, right? Or
The
even
challenge,
just humanity, just being a good human, you know? I think that's from being having good virtues.
yeah, the challenge is
Because
teaching
if
them.
all those virtues are pointing to truth, beauty, and goodness, then whether they choose to be, a monk, or they choose to be a professor, or a firefighter, or whatever it might be, um they're always searching for truth, good, and beauty, so which is all leading back to everlasting things.
Right. And the
So
challenge is like teaching them certain ones, like patience and courage. Some of those come naturally to some people, and other people that don't. And so it's like, how do you teach patience? I guess because I feel like there's certain things that maybe the person has to experience themselves in order to understand what it means to be a certain way, or they have to go through trial and error. They have to go through failure to learn, like patience,
yeah,
you know?
like some of it has to be through trial and error, and perhaps some of it can be taught by example,
Yeah,
right? Like they see you do something, and let's say, you're just a person that always speaks truth, you know, and whenever your child, sees that, they're like, wow, this my dad or my mom always speaks truth, right? But if they see you like, hey, tell your grandmother that I'm asleep, and you're actually awake, the child knows that you're awake, but you're telling the child to lie, which means you're teaching them that lying is good or unharmful, right? Because sometimes they perhaps there's such thing as a good lie, you know, to
yeah,
protect someone or protect something. But if the majority of time, if it's not, necessary, you can just say the truth, right?
right.
And it's interesting because kids and drunks are the only people that sometimes say truths like
Oh,
openly, right?
yeah, dude.
But we lose that ability to say the truth. And why is that?
Because,
Right? Why is that?
well, social norms teach us that it's impolite to be too honest, and we need
Mm,
social approval. Without social approval, we feel like an outcast and it doesn't feel good. So we try to prevent confrontations, and we don't want to make people feel bad because we don't want to be outcasted. We want to fit in. So we learn to
yeah,
lie.
but I think we can fit in by saying the truth. I was gonna say even Jesus was, beat to death on in the cross by saying the truth, by saying
Yeah,
people's truths, right? So so is it a matter of courageousness, or is it a matter of just fitting in and being lukewarm, not saying the truth all the time, but hey, if I can say the truth and it doesn't harm anyone, then I'll say it. If not, I won't say nothing. I'll just be passive.
yeah, it takes courage
So
to tell the truth.
it takes courage, which is a virtue, So, I think that's what people mean, I think, by following Jesus's steps. I'm always surprised by reading the Bible and seeing how he would respond at different times to people. And that can only come with virtue, right? Virtue and knowledge. And so in order to become like Jesus, or be an image of Jesus in the world, is to become a virtuous person, right? Because a virtuous person knows what to say in the right moment, because they will always choose truth, beauty, and goodness.
Right?
So
Yeah, we
I think
strive.
that's the ultimate, you know, person that everyone can strive for. And what is cool is, people's variations of that, because as we were saying, our younger self and our current self has certain inclinations that are consistent throughout time. And so, for example, what what if you could become a virtuous film producer, right? Or a virtuous counselor, right? Or a virtuous artist, right? So, that's so cool, because if you have virtuous people in their professions, that adds a different spin, because they're searching for truth, goodness, and beauty in each of those areas, which, if we have different professions doing that, then that's moving the culture and the civilization to a more virtuous society.
Yeah, the more people that do that, exactly, especially through their
right?
work, because our work takes up the majority of our lives. Think about it.
Yeah.
And if everyone did that, then the world would be a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely virtuousness, right? Because a lot of people think like, well, if everybody was happy, if everybody was understanding, open-minded, yeah, but I think that those have a little bit of flaws in them,
Well, if
you
everyone
know?
was happy, I mean, what kind of effect would that have on the world, you know? If everyone
Yeah.
if everyone got what they wanted simultaneously, all
Oh, yeah. Everyone, yeah, that would be
I don't even know
pretty hard. But virtuousness, I don't think if everybody was virtuous, I don't think that would be a problem in society
yeah, it could probably lead to a lot of good.
because everybody would be seeking the best in others, right? Searching for good beauty and goodness in others. And so then we could really handle those situations of like, hey, like this person, like being just, like justice is also a virtue. So justice, humility, patience, we could just, I think a society could function very well. And I wonder if the idea of heaven is where virtuous people go. Maybe that's the ultimate virtuous society
But yeah, I
where
think
people are
that's
seeking knowledge, where people are seeking truth, where people are seeking beauty. Maybe that's a place where souls can experience true virtuousness.
yeah, perhaps that's the purpose of it, you know?
Yeah, or what people would call holiness. Like I wonder like that idea of holiness is wholesome, right? If somebody's wholesome, right? I know that holy is a different word than whole, but if holiness can relate to wholesome, then we're really looking for a well-rounded individual, human being, right? That and so if we're essentially striving for virtuousness, we're striving for holiness at the same time, right? And so just food for thought to think about.
Definitely something to reflect on, you know?
So how,
Yeah,
yeah, that would be something cool if I could, you know, have that conversation with my younger self about virtuousness. I think that
yeah,
would save a lot of time
yeah,
because now I'm understanding it and I'm realizing that that's really what we're all trying to search for, right? Jordan Peterson says you need to have an aim and work on it every day, and that brings meaning into your life, purpose into your life, because then you start seeing that, oh, I'm getting better at this
yeah, that's true.
every single day. And
Yeah,
so for some people that might start off as, you know, making my bed every day, or I'm gonna set a goal to go to the gym every day, and they start seeing that their physical self begins to look better and better or feel better and better, and they're like, oh, I'm improving, I'm getting better sleep, I feel better, my body feels better. Um and so the idea of improvement is what human beings strive for, right? And so I if we could just see the magnitude that beauty that virtue can bring into our lives, I think it would be interesting how can we advertise virtuousness as a means to for people's goals, like
yeah, yeah.
because
You have to show the
do
positive.
we need to go to the education system, and help teachers inspire virtue in beings, and because I've seen that, like they used to have in my elementary these prizes for being honest, for being punctual, for being you know good helper in the classroom, stuff like that, that was in a way virtues, right? We're recognizing those who showed excellence in a certain virtue. um, I'm not sure if schools do that anymore. Um, Everybody gets a prize nowadays. So,
Yeah, that's true, and it diminishes the effect of the reward if you give prizes out for everything because I mean, imagine rewarding someone every day with the same reward or a similar reward. It's not really going to have as a powerful an effect on the seventh day compared to the first time they got the reward. It's just standard habituation and desensitization. That's how our brain works. But if you could find a way to help them realize that these virtues are going to be self rewarding for them and that it's going to bring natural rewards in the future, and to really show that there's practical positive benefits out of being virtuous, then you could probably get people to buy into it because people will naturally want to go towards where a reward is. That's kind of how our brain is wired. But it definitely takes a special person to be able to stand above that whole thing, above the whole reward system, to be able to not, to be able to still be good and be virtuous even when they're not rewarded. That's the ultimate virtuous person.
Mm, yeah, yeah. That's
Did Jesus do that? Did Jesus do
take
good?
credit. Yeah,
Did he do good because he was going to get rewarded, or did he do good for the sake of doing good? Yeah,
yeah. That's an ethical question, right? Because I remember talking about in my ethics class about that. Like, do we do good because it's just inherently good to do that,
yeah,
or do we do good for some sort of recognition or reward,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, we talked
And
about
so,
that in my social psychology class. The idea that we mentioned before, I think, about experiments about altruism and showing that people, it was questioning whether altruistic, helpful acts are good if there's an underlying motive. Because if it makes you feel good to do good, does that mean it's still moral to do good? Because you're getting some type of pleasure from doing good. It's a weird question, but it's interesting.
yeah, yeah. Well, any last thoughts, Steele?
Um, It takes a lot of work and effort to be a virtuous person, and sometimes it takes trials and errors and life lessons to realize for yourself the benefits that it can bring to you and others. So I would say,
Yeah, yeah. Kind of going off of that, but if you don't go through that pain and suffering, you never grow in that, right? Just
yeah,
like in working out, if you never have the your muscles tear, there's never opportunity for them to actually grow.
yeah,
So they with growth there comes suffering with striving for virtue or sometimes any goal, right? Any goal that that somebody has, there has to be some sacrifice and some suffering. So we just have to learn how to suffer well.
yeah. It's hard to have empathy if you haven't suffered in some way. Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely.
That's true. Nice deal. Well, thank you guys. Thank you all for listening in today to the podcast. We really appreciate you listening to the end of this podcast. If you have any questions, comments, please let us know down below in the comment section. We really like to know what you thought about this podcast today. And also, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so today. That way you can continue getting all the content that we put out every week for you guys. So without further ado, we'll talk to you soon and stay golden. Take care.